good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to October's first Friday. Would you believe this is our 10th of the year? But Hannah and I are very much enjoying these. This month, what we're looking at is that Hannah is going to be continuing having a look through Canva. We know Canva is a really popular tool that churches are using to create visual communication. So Hannah's going to be creating a brand through that. And then I'll be having a look at what's known as image generative AI, image generative artificial intelligence, using a particular piece of software, because it's an interesting thing that's been in development this year, and I've been found it a fascinating topic to have a look at, and I think it's got some relevance for churches as well. So for those that maybe joining us for the first time, just a sort of reminder that Hannah and I are really passionate about local church communications, and this past year we've tried to look at a whole range of different topics and areas which we hope are helpful for those not only joining us now live in this space, but also those watching us afterwards. Church communications, whether or not you're pioneering or part of a very large church, are really important to sort of get right, and we know that it's a constantly changing landscape, and sort of we're here because we're passionate about the good news, and the good news needs to be communicated well. So what we will do is our standard practice. Hannah and I will do a bit of opening sharing on our topic for this month, and then after that we will stop our recording here, and then we'll have a chat in the space. But the videos and the slides and anything else people want will be available afterwards, which I will email out. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Hannah. Thanks, Hannah.
Oh, super. So actually, that feels like we're not going to go straight into Canva first, even though it is sort of about using Canva. So I'm going to be thinking about creating a sort of sub-brand off my hypothetical church that I've been using for First Fridays, which is Lighthouse Road Baptist Church. And because I've already created that brand, rather than creating a new one for that, I thought, wouldn't it be a good opportunity to think about what I'd need to do to create a kind of sub-brand for a ministry group or a project going on that is still kind of thinking about my main brand, but also like, what do we do when we're starting from scratch? So kind of the major thing will be thinking about a logo, because that's the sort of icon or image that will be used sort of most often, and actually that's the thing that you really want people to recognize when it's being used. And I feel like a bit of a broken record with saying this, of refer back to your comms plan. That's a good place to start. Before we sort of panic going into Canva and going, what do we do? I don't know where to start. What colors should we be thinking about? What font do we use? Go to your comms plan and really read through it, update it if it's needed. But if you've recently done it, think about kind of who you are, and sort of what are your values, what are the sort of keywords that you pick out when describing your church, because obviously that will then inform the sub project. So for this, I'm going to be doing this sort of community cafe that I referred back to in the last First Friday we did. So I had in the Christmas plan, I had the sort of Wednesday, I think it was, community cafe that I was doing in the morning. So obviously that is coming out of the church, so it still needs to echo the tone and the heart of who the church is. And in a way, though I'm not saying it needs to be done for everything, because I don't want to add loads more work, but it can be helpful to have a kind of like mini comms plan within for that particular project, of thinking, well, who are we trying to reach? Because actually, if it's a community cafe, I'm not really trying to talk to those people within the church family necessarily. I'm trying to reach the people on our like geographical community. I'm trying to connect with people who maybe are disconnected from church, who maybe don't really want to come into the building on a Sunday, for those who are isolated, those who are possibly experiencing the real challenge of the cost of living crisis, and sort of places such as the sort of warm spaces project last year that I think is sort of coming back into force for this season. It's those sorts of people that we want to be reaching. So actually, we just need to be thinking slightly differently in how we're going to be communicating with those people, because the likelihood is it's not going to be the same as how we're doing it with church. But also, actually, if we're doing these things, we want to be thinking about connecting with the council, local service providers, and not necessarily your doctors as such, but sort of those organizations that maybe it's helpful to sort of keep connected in with them, and possibly even kind of local funeral directors or citizen advice, places like that actually maybe it's just nice to sort of have connection with them, and for them to know that you have this space of welcome and warmth and community that anyone is welcome to join. So it's kind of just thinking, right, we just need to think slightly differently about how we're going to be talking with those people and how we're going to be reaching and where we will be doing that. Will it be mostly printed stuff? Will it be on social, or will it be on screen? So actually, if we're going to be doing those who are feeling cost of living and, challenges of poverty, likelihood is we're not necessarily going to be pushing so much on social media, because the reality is likelihood is they might not be on those places as much. Probably print would be better, but not just flyers where it gets ignored, but actually maybe we want to be doing some nice posters or some leaflets that we can put in certain places or even give to the schools. So it's just thinking about kind of actually where do we want to be doing it? Because if we're doing it on something where people have a bit more time to look at it, maybe we can add a bit more into it, rather than if it's just on social, we want to be creating kind of a short, sharp brand that people will be quickly looking at. And, it would be different types of content that you're creating. And then actually when we go into creating the brand and the logo itself, try and make it original. Well, don't try, make it original. Don't run any risks of being caught for copyright and stuff like that. And I will explain kind of what I mean by that in a second when we go into Canva. But sort of make it original, but also sort of try and have it so that not that it's obvious, but that there is a balance between it being unique, but also understanding what it is. So for Lighthouse Road, I mean, I'd like to think it looks fairly obvious. It's the top of a lighthouse, the logo. But also you can take inspiration from symbols. And I suppose this is more probably relevant to actually if you're creating your church logo. So if we're taking sort of the more broad perspective of it, but there's some fascinating examples, and I will put them in the handout of articles about church logos, where people have they've not made an obvious cross, or it's not just a cross, actually, it's a cross made out of something that is kind of representative of the area, of perhaps something that's specific that the church cares about, or that they have done a bird, a dove, but it's made up of different things. And it's very clever that actually when you look at it, and it's distinguishable on its own, it's not just a cross that anyone could have made, but actually it's an icon within itself, but it has kind of multiple layers to it, and they can be then very interesting to look at, and therefore you have more engagement with them because people actually sort of like I think take the time then to look at them again. Using iconography, but having actually, so again in Lighthouse Road, of having not just your full name and that is the logo, but actually having a icon to be used and distinguishable as your logo, not just here's the name and that's it, but actually here's the icon that we can use when we don't need to put the whole of the name at the bottom of the poster, because actually that's then taking up too much space, which then goes into keeping it simple, because for a logo it doesn't need to be, I should have put in kind of like, if you see two golden arches, what's that? Obviously McDonald's. If you see a tick, what's that? Obviously Nike. If you see sort of three stripes, that's Adidas. They're very obvious, and granted they are sort of international big brands, but there is a way of creating something that is quite recognizable and that people see and are familiar with, and therefore when they see content that is posted, or a poster or a flyer or something where it's got that icon, people kind of go, oh, I know what that is already. And then on fonts as well, I've said this before, that it can be helpful to have kind of some key fonts that the church uses, either on posters or on key literature. Nothing that is difficult to access. So whilst it's great to have designers, if you have someone who's a designer within your church to come in and help you create a logo, that's brilliant. but you don't want them to be like, oh, use this font that actually costs £150, but it can only be used in Photoshop or something. You don't want that. You want something that is accessible to be able to, of anyone to be able to use it. You know, if you've got it to be accessible on Canva, or if you've got people, different people using it on different platforms. So yes, and the whole sort of creating a logo it shouldn't be just I've done it once and that's it. Like it is important to have kind of collective input, so having a team to kind of think about it beforehand, and the brand as well, of people thinking about it beforehand, thinking of what we want this to represent and what we're representing by it, but then also afterwards, of not just going, right, I've done it in an hour and that's it, but actually having a bit of sort of like dialogue with people within the church, but at the same time also not letting everyone in the church have an opinion on it, because actually that can then become slightly unhelpful if you're going they just become unhelpful, because not you just listen to everyone, and actually then you have a sort of a mixed resulting brand and logo, rather than something that actually you felt was quite solid from your pre-work for it. So then, I missed it. Yeah. And so if we're then creating the sub logo, so let's then be thinking about actually for my community cafe, what do we want to do? Well, actually, you don't want to have, if you've made an effort or you have quite a nice logo for your church and a good brand, you don't want to then think about creating something that is completely different and completely separate, that has nothing actually to do with your church. Even if they are different ministries, you do want to still have a link, or for them to be some sort of cohesion with them. But at the same time, actually, perhaps it's something slightly different. So if it's something that is very much like, this is from the church doing this, which for the cafe, that is something that the church is doing, but it is a sort of front-facing, out of the church project, rather than something that is sort of an internal thing. That's fine. But at the same time, it might be a food bank that perhaps actually you don't want to have so much of a connection with the church, because that might put off funding partners, or actually you want people to not see it as being part of the church. Perhaps you do. Or I'm trying to think of something that might, a preschool or something, perhaps actually, because it's a separate organisation, a separate charity, even though they happen to be using the church grounds, but actually they are very independent. So you could have a kind of input in it in terms of sort of echoing the brand, but it would be separate, and sort of that's fine. There doesn't need to be any kind of cohesion with that. So then the things we need to be thinking about branding then, and colours and fonts and things, actually, do we want it then separate but linked? So this will all make sense when I go into Canva to show you. But we want to be thinking, right, so Lighthouse Road, it's very blues. Do I want it to be still lots of blues, or do we want it slightly separate? Do we want it complementary or contrasting? And then it needs to be something that can be used consistently, and that everyone is aware of. Everyone is knows that this is the branding, this is the font, these are the types of things, the tones that we're using. So we're not saying like, be very careful about language of join or something, if it sounds then actually like you have to sign up for something, or being like, actually we want to be very intentional about using language like invited and sort of not book now. Actually, we don't want to use that, because that infers sort of like, actually you might have to pay for something, so, or buy a ticket for a specific event, but actually it's a free event, but it's still you still want people to sign up anyway. But just thinking about actually what is the language you're using, so that when your leadership team or the sort of organizing team, you've not had someone then randomly do the Christmas poster that's going to end up having nothing to do with your brand, and then people are getting all confused. And again, then thinking about print and online, and that should have been a comma there. I'm also then having to think about, well, how am I going to be using this? I do want to connect with all of those sort of council service providers, doctors, and all those organisations. So actually, I need to be aware that this does look professional, and these do look sort of things that people would be happy to hand out. It's not just sort of some it doesn't look clip arty or sort of a bit amateurish, but actually these are things that we want people to be happy to give out alongside things sort of from the NHS and such. So yes, that's it. And not I'm making that sound as if it's sort of there needs to be sort of a real high level of professionalism with it. It's not that, but I'm just thinking about how it's being used as opposed to kind of internal comms within the church. So going then on to the cafe, so it's a weekly community cafe. And this is what I mean by thinking about your comms plan. These are just sort of, it's writing down a few thoughts of like, what are the things we need to be inferring or sort of thinking about as we create the brand. So community cafe, it's a weekly community cafe, so socialization, warm places, hunger, you know, even just regular contact, possibly for students and stuff like that, to sort of retired people who maybe are in even retirement homes, and the church, they're looking for places to come to. And so actually the church cafe or the community cafe would be a lovely place for people. So it's, you know, intergenerational mixing is lovely. We do want to work with local organisations and doing a variety of activities as well. So think about what we're going to do. So we'll be offering within sort of warm places, thinking about food offering, you know, hot drinks, biscuits, there's no charge. You know, we would rely on funding or donations, but this is something the church really believes in. But rather than calling it necessarily the cafe or LRBC cafe, because that sounds possibly a bit churchy, then actually just giving it a slightly different name. So because Lighthouse Road Baptist Church is by the sea, as I established in the sort of about section of the comms plan, actually what would be a really nice name is Harbour, because actually that infers then sort of welcoming, coming, but also releasing, replenishing and stuff like that. Also realising the time. So that should then say, now we're going to go on to quickly and do Canva. So this, right, stop share. This is going to be, get the right one. There we go. Right, can you all see that okay? Super. So here is the Lighthouse Road brand that I've got. And not that we're necessarily going to be using that entirely, but it is a good helpful thing of just thinking, right, here's the blues and the colours and the style that I want to go for. There's the logo, and I have picked out the blue and I have put it in a really cool app called Coolers, which is a colour generation site, really fun and very pretty colours to look at. I have locked that colour in by that one there, and you essentially press the space bar on it and it creates lots of different colours. But if I go back, I really like this palette because I think that it is different. It's different from the other colours used by Lighthouse Road, but I think the orange is light and bright and sort of is quite nice and welcoming and friendly. So I'm going to use these colours to sort of inform my brand. So I have put the colours up the top there just so that I can find them. So if we go back, so in Canva, that's sort of, this is the one of the main screens that you can have. I've just got it within a folder of all of my Lighthouse Road bits here. So if we're thinking, right, what do we want to be doing? If you go up on the top space bar there, if you type in logo, either you can have projects that you've already done or templates. And actually, you can find loads and loads and loads. And this is not just for logos. You could have posters, flyers, slides, whatever, and people have created templates that you can use. So I'm going to say, just because actually I quite like that, it doesn't matter actually what it says. If you like the style of it or the colors or the font or something, actually that might be quite nice to use. I quite like the stripes there. So I click on that and then press customize this template. And that then comes up with that template there. And essentially it duplicates it from the main one. So you're not editing the main one, it duplicates it. And sort of now you have ownership of your own version. So thinking then about, nope, that's not what I want. Nope. There we go. Right. So if I've got then Lighthouse Road colours there, what I can also do is I'm going to add a page. So hang on, if I do that. So that's the sort of, and this is on all of pages, all different designs. If you add a page, it will just add a blank page. But if you got the top here, and you can see you've got a kind of up arrow, a down arrow, a lock, duplicate, a bin, or add a page. If you duplicate it, it will actually give you, it will just duplicate that page, which can be very helpful if you're working on a theme of going, well, let's keep that so I know what was there. I always find it helpful of just if it's a poster and you might be moving things around. And what I might do, that's annoying. So I can't change those colors. So, oh no, fair enough. So if those had been colors that we could change, that would have been really cool, and we could have added the 3 colors in there. But it's a good thing of like just checking first of like actually what are the different things. So those are just text that you can change, and that's fine. But that is actually a photo rather than a graphic that you could change. So let's say we start from a blank template, but what we can do is if I add a page, there's a blank template. If you go up to design on the top left-hand side, and I'm going to click on Harbour just to see what comes up. Nope, that's not the one I want. Actually, that'd be good. That'd be good just to keep for a second. And so we've got this, and it's always worth just clicking on it to see what it looks like. But I have selected this one because actually I think it's quite nice to look at, and possibly would fit with the brand. And so when I say keep it original, you can use Canva graphics and logos. You just then can't copyright them. But also, actually, you don't want to copy them necessarily because you never know where it's else being used. Like, you don't want to copy it exactly and use it. So I'm going to play around with it slightly just to see you know, how we might be able to change it. But I like the idea of it being a boat and a person. And the idea of it's not the sort of exact copy of this, but actually you could see, let's get rid of that one. You could see how it could work. So if I click on the outside of it, you can see it selected the circle. And if we go to colors, it will either come up with colors that are already in the document. It will come up with, you've got then your brand colors. But actually, because I've inputted a photo, which is why it's always helpful to input, either have them as set as brand colors or have your photo in there. Because I've put them in there, it has already picked up that there are photos within the document. So I'm going to put that orange there, and I quite like that. But in a way, maybe I don't like it with the person in it so much. Because that infers sort of perhaps that someone is on their own, maybe. But let's, you know, we could create a couple of different options. So I've got the other one here. So I've just duplicated that page, and I'm going to just make that orange as well. But I'm going to remove this person here, and just so it's easier to see for everyone, by clicking over everything and dragging, you select then everything. And what you can do, if you know that you want to keep everything in precision or in proportion with each other, you can group it so it then just becomes one thing, rather than if like here it's all picking up as the individual items. So it can be very helpful if you've got it within or you've got certain elements within a poster or something. But I'm just going to make it, stretch it out so that it's bigger. And then if I start dragging down, you can see it's got the center line, which you kind of have to do it slowly for it to, because otherwise you move it too quickly and it will sort of, you'll lose it. But it can be really helpful again if you're doing a poster or something specific, and where you do want it center. So it's just sort of going slowly, and when those lines appears, you know, okay, cool, that's center. Harbour, maybe we'll call it Harbour Cafe, and then, oh no, that's too big. What I can do is press So I think, sorry, I'm working on a Mac, but with a Windows keyboard. So I'm not sure always which ones it is exactly, but I think it would either be kind of Control A or the Windows button. I'm pressing the Windows button and then A, and it selects all, but that also works for everything. So if I click on this one, so I'm in this space, if I select A, Windows A, it comes up with selecting everything. So that could be helpful rather than clicking and dragging. But so rather than trying to select it and it might select the others, I'm going to do select A. And we're going to take it down font size rather than trying to make it smaller. And actually then we're then reshuffling everything around. If we put it at 50, it's still a bit big. Let's make it 40. At 30, let's make it 35. Bit better. But also what you can do with text is you can adjust the letter spacing. So, I mean, I don't know if you'd really want it that close, but maybe for a logo, actually, we want it all quite spaced out. And then if you've got lines in it as well, you can adjust the line size. So again, if you've got kind of a few sentences on there, and probably more posters and things, that can be very helpful. Perhaps as well, we'd want to make it capitals. Actually, then let's make it a little bit smaller just so it fits in line with the circle. And then because we're on thinking about keeping it kind of consistent within the branding of Lighthouse Road, I'm just going to check. So intro Rust is the logo. So let's actually go that one. Intro Rust. Yeah, so we keep that. So actually it's still got the font, so there is a sort of a link within that. And actually let's make that the blue rather than black, because black feels very aggressive. We'll make it the darker blue rather than, so we're going to make it this blue rather than the consistent blue, not quite consistent, but royal blue, to keep it consistent. And okay, actually I want to adjust things slightly. If you ungroup it, and then it all becomes individual assets. But I'm going to make now this a little bit bigger so that we can see it. And that sort of, again, if we're thinking about this, it's going to be print. Obviously, maybe the logo is not going to be massive on it, but we want it to be clear that that's a boat. And perhaps even maybe we'll change it and we'll make it like that. I'm going to drag it out a bit. I find it helpful for text to put them end to end and just adjust it from there. And we're going to make that a bit bigger, but we'll make small that size. And perhaps actually, maybe let's not have white. Let's make that blue. But then oh no. Okay, so now that's something to think about of, well, what do we do about that? Now I'm going to do this really poorly, but quickly, just so, because you can see how cool it can be. So we can edit image. Should be able to. Oh, it might not be on this one. That's annoying. Oh. Okay, I can't do it on this one. If we had an image, so if I go down and let's get uploads, you can see all the things that I have done. Just trying to find a picture. Okay, let's say that one. Totally irrelevant, but just go with me on this. So I've got a picture of mine. If I edit photo, so this is where Canva is really becoming an amazing tool. They're doing some really cool things with AI. And one of the things that I really love, so what we could do is autofocus, if that might not work on that. Might have broken it, that's fine. BG remover, background remover. So say we had something, we want some candles, but we only want the front, the candles to be identified rather than the background. That's a poor example. It doesn't quite work, but you can see how it selected that. So actually, if we had it on just a plain black background and we just wanted that as opposed to all of it, but then what we can do is if you click on the, so because we've used it, it comes up with sort of adjustment little button. So I can actually restore part of it. So I'm going to make the brush small and I'm going to just find the flames and this is where it sort of takes a bit of time to do. And sometimes you might kind of go a bit further. And so I can see actually that flame isn't as big. So if I go to erase, it'll allow me to erase that. That's not well done, and it's very finicky, but on some things it can be very helpful. But you can see then actually we could use that as a sort of basis for a Christmas flyer or something, or a Christmas asset, without needing the whole of the background in it. So we could do that, but actually, do you know what? I don't entirely dislike it with the waves coming out. It sounds like we're going outside beyond our borders. That sounds cool. So for me, I'm happy with this logo. I feel it looks I think it looks professional. I would be happy to show someone, you know, counsellor or something, and be like, here, look, here's my flyer for our cafe. But what then can be helpful is if we've got these, and if I then just create, so if we just do square, and then it will come up with square things. It's always really good looking at elements and searching things. So you've got frames that you could use. There are videos now in there. There's sounds. You've got different types of graphics and shapes that you can use. And you can select them down. It won't let you use them if you don't have a pro account. But if you do have a pro account as a charity, that you know, you can access everything. So it's automatically selected the blue. But if I click it and press Windows C and then Windows V, no, click off it. If I press Windows C and then click off it and press V, Windows V, Windows V, I can just copy and paste them. So it'd be the same as if I just pressed copy. But then if I separate them out, and what I can do is if I select all three of them, position, and you can align things. So this is really helpful if you've got multiple text, different text blocks, if you're just wanting to align them, and you can align them in different ways. So we could align them at the top, and that will automatically make them middle, because they're all the same size. But if we do press space evenly horizontally, actually I won't do it because I think you have to kind of set the outside width, so it won't move the end pieces. But if we do that, I can see obviously that they're not exactly aligned. If I press that makes them all equally spaced. So I'm just going to quickly press the orange for that one and the white for that. So then for something else, maybe I can just use the sand if we're on a dark background, or if we're just printing, you know, we could change the variance on that. So actually let's make that the darker blue, that the white, because we're going to put it on a black and white background, and then, or vice versa, of that being white and that being, let's make that the blue. And actually then we could make that the blue as well. So actually the because they're individual assets, we can use them in different ways. I had a load of other some things to think about as well, but just a few things then if we're thinking about where we're using them. If you go to share, so if I've got this one and I know it's page 2, and I'm going to now right at the top, the Harbour Cafe version 1, let's say. And if I share, press download. So you can pick a couple different types if you wanted. So JPEG, PNG, if we were printing it, or if we were making it into a little video to put on social media. But then rather than do all of them, you deselect all pages. It will deselect all of them, but it tells you what one that you're currently on. So I could press page 2 because that's the one I'm currently on, download. And if I wanted, okay, it's a logo, so I want transparent background. And then download, and that will then download my one file that I can then use on different assets. I'm aware that I've gone massively over my time, so I'm going to shut up now, but I hope that makes sense. But also playing around with various different elements and colors and styles, so you could show them all to people, you know, within the process, and getting feedback and seeing what people think. I hope that has been helpful. Mike, over to, oh, I need to put your slides up, don't I? There we go. Can you all see that okay?
Good.
Super.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Hannah. I'm going to do an alternative approach to the logo creation, which I've been doing whilst Hannah's been talking. I'll come on to that in a moment. My little brief introduction to my section is around really artificial intelligence over the past year becoming far more mainstream. It's something that's we've seen far more in the media, on the news. Now, of course, artificial intelligence is in actual reality in terms of scientific and community and in computer science has been around for decades. There's nothing new around algorithms learning from data and affecting the programming which they've been doing. We will have a look at a definition in just a moment. So in some respects, there's lots of popular ways of looking at. Clearly, science fiction has been looking at this for years. There you go. We've got a little bit of the apocalyptic end. We've got a sort of Terminator type thing, of where will this lead to? I'm sort of scared or anxious about this, down to, I don't know, something like from Disney's Pixar, the sort of little Wall-E type character. Where will we go to? So if anybody who's into sort of popular mainstream sci-fi culture, AI and where it might lead to has been going on for a long time. But I'm safe to say that we aren't quite there yet. So let's sort of drill down a little bit further. So could I have the next slide on with that, please? So where are we actually at? And this is where I sort of got interested with this earlier on this year, particularly with the generation of images. Somebody who's always been interested in art and went to art college and also photography. We're entering a new space where we start to question again what is art, creation, the tools of creation. And the old phrase, well, it's probably not been true for a long time, seeing is no longer believing, was probably already a phrase due to photoshopping over the last 30 years. But nevertheless, the use of artificial intelligence has taken that a step further. So the image on the screen there, created by Boris Eldegson, he entered this into the Sony World Photography Awards, into one of their categories there. He didn't tell them that he created this using an image generative AI. And he did it, as he goes onto his own blog, of just seeing whether or not photography awards were ready for AI generated art. And he said afterwards, well, it proved he won, because he won it. He won a World Sony Photography Award by creating something in AI. Now, I find his work actually really fascinating, and I find it a fascinating image that is actually created. And there you go. You've got an instant set of questions of going, this is an interesting image. It tells a story. What is about the young woman being weighed down by an older version of herself? Is it her older version? Is it her mother? So, in fact, the questions of art instantly come up. But then again, is it right to have used artificial intelligence to have entered a competition? Is it cheating? Is it right? So, or straight away, you get sort of go into a whole series of questions, which I've been finding fascinating. Other people have entered. In fact, I think the first time I read about it was about a year ago, where somebody else in America won a statewide photography award. But he afterwards then said he'd created it in AI, and everybody was quite outraged at that. But over the past year, other people like Boris have been doing this. So on to the next one, please, Hannah. So yeah, again, just a little bit of what is artificial intelligence? There can be lots of different complicated things. And this isn't the most simple one, but it was a summary, which at least we can have on screen and on the slides afterwards. It effectively allows machines to learn from experience, to adjust to inputs, information being placed into them, and then ultimately perform human-like tasks like creating a photograph or an image. But of course, AI is everywhere now. Anybody who plays chess, I like playing online chess. I play canasta with my mum and dad pretty much most days. And if we haven't got enough of us to make four of us, we will use the artificial intelligence bot to join us in that game to make up a missing player. People who have got a modern electric car, that's full of AI. Anybody who's got a phone these days has got an AI assistant within that. Where things have developed, particularly over the last decade, is what's known as deep learning and natural language processing. So it allows us as human to basically interact with the computers in their language. And that from the data that the algorithms receive, they are then able to accomplish some amazing tasks. And clearly they can process huge amounts of data and recognize patterns within that. Okay, on to the next one, please, Hannah. Thank you. And why should I be bothered? Here I am, a local church pastor or somebody in church, small church. AI seems a very long way. It will affect you. It is affecting you one way or another now. The things you are using will have AI in now, unless you are literally living in a wood and completely off grid with nothing. You are using AI now. AI is interacting with you, and whether you're doing that consciously or in fact the way that you're browsing your computer, the way that you're browsing your phone, AI is for the permissions that you've given. And sometimes for the permissions you haven't, AI in the background is learning from the way in which you are interacting and the content that you might be interested in. So the thing is that you talk about it with somebody, and let's see who watches this afterwards in the screen. Within half an hour or so of this, you start getting things related to AI appearing in your feeds or adverts. It's amazing how things are listening and will suddenly appear. As you seem to think, well, I can't remember mentioning this, but all of a sudden it's there. So these things are happening. But nevertheless, let's not go back to Terminator just at the moment. It is a professional tool in many respects, and where the real growth is that companies and organizations around the world are paying AI developers to create something very bespoke for their company, which will help their software or their delivery work even better. So for an example, many people have heard of ChatGPT as a text-based one there, which is great. You can go and use that. But as somebody who's in communications, we've mentioned this before, but I use Hootsuite to manage our national social media. Hootsuite has now incorporated AI into its social media platform. So when you are trying to create branding, it has created its own social media AI to help you with prompting to what text you should use. It's also using AI in terms of linking in with your own channel to work out the best time to post things as well. So it's there, but they are tools to be used. But there are also ethical and theological implications as a result of all this. For those of you that have the Baptist Together magazine, I look at this in a bit more detail in the current edition. So have a look at that online, or if you've got a copy. I start to have a look at some of the ethics of what this means for people whose job it is to actually generate, or designers, people who in fact may well get superseded by people not bothering to contact them for a particular job because they think AI will do that. I've got friends with my backgrounds in design, and I've got friends who are very concerned about this, about how this will affect their business going forward. Theologically, we've got that whole situation of really the second commandment, looking at idolatry. There's an awful lot of idolatry in the world, and some of what generative AI, images, all these sorts of things, and Instagram in particular, the effect that is having on people. And also, again, seeing is believing. And where it gets particularly difficult is where the blue, where people will use actual photographs mixed with the AI, as Hannah looked at earlier. You can curate something very clever now, but it's what does that affect? How does that affect people going forward? And then the way that the actual algorithms themselves work. So I am going to be using one called Midjourney in a moment, but I do have to say I have significant reservations with how they work. Midjourney, the algorithms that they're working, they are still in beta. It's not quite a full release, but nevertheless, the data being shoveled into the algorithms is basically whatever it's finding on the internet. It's not asking for permission for those sources. It retrospectively says to the artists that spot anything similar, we will remove your data from the data sets. But that to me is still probably theft. So I have significant issues with that. So I think in terms of how the data that's inputted into algorithms has got to be carefully looked at. And no doubt lawsuits will ensue for some of these things because it is so early. I don't know whether I'm about there on that one, Hannah. Let's have a look. Yeah, so let's journey. I'm going to I will share my screen and have a look. Let me just bring up that one. So that was a bigger picture of the Sony Photographic Award. Quickly having a look at Midjourney. So Midjourney, I'm very happy for those either on screen now or afterwards. If anybody wanted sort of a deeper dive because of time now, we can have a look at setting up what's known as Discord. So Discord, for those of you that have not come across it, is like it's classed as social media, but it's a bit of like a far more whistles and bells WhatsApp. Basically, is the best way I can describe it. It's very popular with gamers. Basically, servers get set up, people join those servers. There's lots of community interaction. It's around themes. It's around a particular topic. So you basically set up your Discord account, and then that will be blank. And then within Midjourney, if you go to the midjourney.com, you then you click down here, join the beta. And then what happens is that it basically takes you to Discord and you accept the invite. That's what happens with that there. And that's how you interact with what is a huge number of people on the Midjourney Discord. As you can see there's 15 odd million people on that Discord. That's some sized group with that. And as you will find out, you can explore then with the Midjourney bot, but it's very intense being on with that many people. So I've paid for this sort of roughly, I think it's around $10 a month. You can have private chats with the Midjourney bot, and we shall go on to that now. So I'm in Discord here now, and I've got my Midjourney bot here. So it's just me. I've not got other people who can interact with that, and I'm not seeing other people generate things with that. In effect, it's really simple here. This is text-based prompting, and back to that sort of interaction, that deep learning based on the interaction between human and machine language here with that. You basically put in a prompt here. Now, I will go through my journey, but I just want to sort of quickly show you how this works. So at the bottom of the screen here, it says message the Midjourney bot. I then click well, in fact, let me just take that back here. Let me see if I just click straight into that there. No, I have to click the back. What is it? I can't quite remember what that is on the keyboard. Anyway, the backslash, that's what I'm trying to think of, the backslash there. And the very simple way you backslash and imagine, and that creates a prompt there at the bottom there. The prompt is there what you write in. And I will have pre-populated some of this here. So here you go. Create a logo based on the word harbor, colourful, abstract with people. So you would just type that in. And then you simply press return. And then away the Midjourney bot goes. It does this, well, as we will see. It takes around about a minute. And then it's sort of like you watch it cooking here on screen now, live. And gradually you can see on the, it's giving you a progress percentage going through there. %, 93%. And there we go there. And then what you can then do is you can sort of click into the 4 options that it's given you. And then it will actually, you can then go sort of a deep dive, go, okay, then I might like that one. Okay, that one's interesting. And you can have a look at that one. Yeah, I quite like that one, actually. There you go. So you can sort of see this is something that's been generated on the fly going forward, but it is a tool, as you can sort of see. What I'll show you what I did whilst Hannah was doing her bit in just a moment, so you can come away from that. What then happens is that, yeah, there's a whole load. You can go look at all the documentation around sort of further prompts and things like that. But basically what you can do is create variation. So on the screen, as you can see it, you've got V1. So that would create a variation of the image, first image. You can upscale it. That's what U1 means. Or you can just refresh and do a whole new more. Here on the bottom here, you can blend images. So you can upload your own images, blend them together. You can upload an image and ask it to create a prompt, which might be helpful. So you can sort of see it is a tool. It's what I've found is that you end up having to work quite hard to land where you want to be with that. So I did a complete opposite way of what Hannah did. She used Canva to create a logo. So while she was doing that, and I'd never tried to create a logo using Midjourney before, so it was interesting here. So I started right up at the top here, and I went contemporary coffee shop logo based on a harbour. Very much what it says on the tin. Now, interestingly, I'm hoping you can sort of see those on the screen there. Obviously, it didn't put the sort of the text in there. I didn't know how well it would do that. Of which, okay, I quite like the one in the bottom right there, but it was definitely not what I was sort of after there. And then I sort of, well, okay, then let's, I did a logo with name of harbour. Okay, I went and had a look at that. I went, still not quite where I was going there. So I thought, where could I thought I'll go far more down an image-based route, and maybe you can then use the image to go a little bit further. So harbour with boats, again, wasn't too sure about that. I wanted to, okay, experiment perhaps with a bit of abstract, develop things. Again, I wasn't quite getting there with that, continued to sort of work with that. So then I thought, okay, create a logo based on the word harbour, colourful, abstract. So that's physically what I wrote in with that. And I thought, okay, then that's looking a bit more interesting. I quite like some of those in there. And I then tried it again with ships. Wasn't too sure about that, so I didn't. I think like that. So again, I took that a little bit further. So I did some variations. Let me have a look. I think I did a variation. So look at the top four. You can see your root variation of that image 4, so that bottom 4th image. So then I created this set based on a variation. And then I think I did a further variation. So you've got, and I particularly quite liked the second one there with that one. I then started to think, well, I want some people in it. And I started to create some more ones with people there, which I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. Going down, and I continued to sort of refine those people and harbour, doing variations with that until where I sort of landed in the finish was a set. I think I had 2 versions I was quite interested in. I still quite like that one, which was generated early on. See on the screen, you can imagine clearly you would have to go away and do something with that because you'd have to add the text in and maybe a circle around it. But I did like the simplicity and the colours of that. And nevertheless, the lighthouse road was still protecting the harbour with that. And then I also quite like that one as something quite dynamic with people as well. And so as you can sort of see, that sort of effort was around about half an hour. That took about half an hour to get that whilst Hannah was sort of working on that. But it goes to show the sorts of things that you can start to do. And in relation to, even if it's just used for inspiration, it can be quite helpful, can't it? Even if you go away from that, go, I'm not using any of those, but I like it. I might go take that to Canva and quite go, well, I might use that. I like that colour and that sweep and recreate it sort of in another way. So I'm hoping for those that are here and for those that will watch this afterwards. So that was an interesting introduction to Midjourney. I'm journeying with it. And like I say, I've got quite a few reservations with how some of this works, but I am fascinated by it. So I know that we've rattled on today. So I know that for the purposes of the video, we will wrap it up now. We will be back again next month. So look out for details both on social media and in email. Thank you.